Coming up on today's show, we're going to discuss whether or not Atlanta should pursue the former All-Pro linebacker Shaquille Leonard, and then some big injury news regarding Atlanta's opponent for Sunday, the Saints coming to town. Could they be without Derek Carr, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, some three key players for this team? But first, let's talk about Shaq Leonard, as he was waived by the Colts today after playing just 70% of the defensive snaps this year. He signed a 5-year, near $100 million contract about 2 years ago. Fast forward, a lot of injuries in between, and he is down to being a rotational linebacker. So ultimately, my suspicion is Shaq Leonard said, hey, if I'm not going to be a starter, which he was starting games, but again, he was being rotated in and out. So if I'm not going to play 90% of the snaps like I was for the first 4 years of my career, then please just release me so I can go play somewhere else. Now, he's got great accolades. Like, if you missed him, I'm sorry. He was tremendous to start his NFL career with the Colts. I mean, what an absolute gem from an FCS program. 15 sacks. Middle linebacker, 15 sacks. I mean, a lot of middle linebackers, some great ones, they don't get to 15 sacks by the end of their NFL careers, right? They maybe get 1, 2, 3 max a year. He had 15 in his first 4 seasons. However, we have seen what's happened with injuries over the last 2 years. Just 12 games, 42 tackles, no sacks. He goes from 11 interceptions, which is even arguably crazier than 15 sacks. Like, the guy is not a corner, and he is still all over the ball. 17 forced fumbles, but those numbers have dramatically plummeted. He is not the dynamic playmaker that he was to start his NFL career. I think there's some major concerns that he is not going to be the same player he was after sustaining all the injuries he did, and some serious injuries, by the way, 2 seasons ago, which caused him to miss pretty much the entirety of the 2022 season. Ultimately, I would love this for Atlanta because Leonard could become a long-term piece, and it's worth the flyer on a 1-year contract for the rest of this season, right? It's not like this Atlanta defense is filled with household names and guys we can count on to be permanent starters moving forward, right? When you look at the Falcons linebacker room, they've got a good thing going here with Caden Ellis, who just got a 3-year deal. Nate Landman has done a phenomenal job filling in for Troy Anderson. But on one hand, are we really about to pass on the possibility of getting a 3-time All-Pro player in November because Nate freaking Landman's having a nice year? Like, I understand the argument of Landman's been a really good player and you just signed Caden Ellis. On the other hand, it's Shaq Leonard. Like, I feel like this is just too good of an opportunity to pass on. Now, Leonard's definitely going to want to go and play for a contending team, and the Falcons at 4-6 might not fit that bill exactly. However, he's from South Carolina, so if he wants to get a little bit closer to home, come back to the Southeast, and he wants to go to a team that thinks that they could have a long-term future for him after this year, then the Falcons might be the place for Leonard. Now, they definitely should not claim him on the waiver wire because that would cost them about $7 million for the rest of the season. Let him clear waivers, and once he clear waivers, all 31 other teams are going to do their homework and research on Shaq Leonard and figure out just how healthy he really is after the big injuries he had, which he has spoken about his playing time. He says, I'm healthy. Maybe the Colts feel otherwise, but if he truly is healthy and the Falcons are like looking around thinking, what are we missing here? There's a 3-time All-Pro player who's not even 30 years old yet on the open market in November. Yeah, let's snatch him up and not think twice about it. So let me know. Should the Falcons add Shaquille Leonard? Yes or no? I don't know exactly what the playing time structure would look like, but I know this much. If you can get that Pro Bowl All-Pro player and add him to a defense that's going to get Grady Jarrett back next year, that has A.J. Terrell and Jesse Bates and a lot of good other cornerstone pieces, this would be a home run for the Falcons. Next up on the show, we're going to talk about some key injury news for this Falcons-Saints matchup on Sunday. A must-win game, in my eyes, for Atlanta to stay in the NFC South hunt. But really quickly, a shout-out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. When we look at my selections for Turkey Day on Thanksgiving, I'm taking the more on Christian McCaffrey at half a rushing plus receiving yard. They're just giving that one to you pretty much. Jahmyr Gibbs, I like the more on his rushing and receiving yards, 79.5. Why not go more all around for all the running backs, right? Tony Pollard as well for the Cowboys. And then I like the more on Ayuk and DK Metcalf combining for at least just one touchdown. Prize Picks is super simple and user-friendly. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. So go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. The link for that is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Now let's talk about the Saints injury report going into this game, which will be official on Wednesday. And it's a pretty good timing for me because our producer today is the host of our Saints channel here at Chat Sports, and he's sweating. And we did not have spicy food for lunch. And so I think that signals Derek Carr, who is still in concussion protocol, coming out of the bye, might not be available for New Orleans. Michael Thomas was just placed on injured reserve. He is out for the next 4 weeks. Marshawn Lattimore is dealing with an ankle injury, which Dennis Allen said could cause him to miss some time. I mean, we're talking about 3 very important players. Well, two really important players in the Michael Thomas. Maybe just Lattimore is the only important player, actually, because Derek Carr is not that good this year. However, to fit our narrative, 3 key players for the Saints might be down for this game. Whereas Atlanta, when we got the initial injury report on Monday after their bye, David Onyemata and D. Alford both practiced after they missed some time with an ankle injury. Taylor Heineke is still sidelined with a hamstring, but Desmond Ridder is the starter anyway. And then Mac Hollins, he also missed Monday's practice as he deals with an ankle injury. Now, if Derek Carr cannot go for New Orleans, the starting quarterback, well, it'll turn to good old Jameis Winston. I mean, you got to love Jameis, right? This year, he has filled in a little bit for Derek Carr here and there. 223 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's must-see TV. You never know what you're going to get out of Jameis. No one can dislike Jameis all that much. I mean, when you look at what he did against the Falcons in his career, as he's played in the NFC South his entire career, he's got a 5-5 record. Now, his 27 touchdowns against Atlanta are by far the most against any one team for J-Mo. 276 yards per game, completion percentage at 66.1. So he does have a knack for playing his best ball when he goes up against the Falcons. So on one hand, maybe it's addition by subtraction for New Orleans, losing Derek Carr, but getting Jameis Winston against the team he kind of has the number against. However, when we look at the Saints wide receiver room in just a moment, you're going to see that they are pretty good even without Michael Thomas. Like Chris Olave is definitely one of the ascending receivers. Rashid, the need for speed, Shaheed is a Saints fan favorite. And A.T. Perry, Lynn Bowden Jr., like I'm sure they'd rather have Thomas than not have him. Although I don't think this offense runs through slant boy anymore. I think they have learned how to live without Thomas. So at this point, having Michael Thomas on the field is more of a treat than a necessity for New Orleans. As for the cornerback room, this could be a loss, right? Losing Marshawn Lattimore for this game would definitely impact New Orleans. Alontae Taylor has had some really good reps for New Orleans this year, but it's Marshawn Lattimore. He's definitely one of the better safeties in our game. And when you've got Drake London on the other side, that's not a player you want to half-ass with, right? That's not someone you do not want to have a good game plan for. So missing Lattimore would be a huge loss for New Orleans. And add in the fact that Desmond Ridder is probably going to be looking for some sort of security blanket in his first game back. And who do you think he's going to turn to? Scotty Miller? No. He's going to want to go to Drake London. So if Marshawn Lattimore is not lined up across from him, that could be a huge mismatch that Desmond Ridder takes advantage of. Obviously, this is a must-win game, just coming off the bye and going up against the Saints team that's 5-5 in the thick of the NFC South at 4-6. But if you lose when it's a must-win game off a bye against a banged-up Saints team, fire Arthur Smith. I mean, they're not going to fire him. I know that, and I know I'm probably just getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but ultimately, like, there are just a lot of factors playing in your favor. Off the bye, you should naturally just be better. Playing against a team that is down some key players, potentially, you should take advantage of that. If you can't, when your season is on the line at 4-6, trying to stay with the Saints in the division, fire Arthur Smith. Who says no? But who you got in this game? Let me know. Falcons or Saints? Give me a Falcons ATL down below if you are rolling with the Dirty Birds. Okay, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Falcons Today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to sign off and see you all later.